Shalom, young brothers, sisters, readers, and
Purchase your
listeners.
tracks
Peace.
today.
This chapter is titled Trim Your Robes.
It's
Coming to you out of the book, Do Not
mellow,
Look to the World for Your
motherfucking
Answers.
beat.
Look at nature. This writing was composed in the 5th month, 2nd day of
Purchase your tracks
2016.
today.
And it is titled Trim Your Robes. Praise Yahweh. I'm your brother, Stephen Israel, the new national representative and ambassador for the nation
Purchase
of
your
Yahweh.
tracks
And
today.
it is an honor to present these literary works before you. So, let's begin. Praise Yahweh. Shalom, young brothers, sisters, readers, and listeners. Peace. This chapter is titled
Purchase
Trim
your
Your
tracks
Robes.
today.
And that is exactly what we need to do, young brothers. Trim your robes. Now, what could I possibly mean by implying and asserting trim your robes?
Purchase your tracks
Well,
today.
as we observe nature to reveal a message to us in our lives, instead of looking at the world with its repetitive
your
and
tracks
conditioned
today.
style of dealing with life's difficulties, its bland and insouciant methodologies, we are led down a narrow path of uncertain answers and
Purchase your
overgrown
tracks
manners
today.
and behaviors. This calls for us to open up our eyes at the world around us, this vast expanse of knowledge and wisdom, to ascertain sure and certain definite signs as points and
Purchase
place
your
markers to
tracks
remind
today.
us of our connection to the universe at large and the universe in our minds. This is what nature shows and displays: the awesome power and imaginative creativity, the depth and height of wisdom that lies and flies right before our eyes. So don't look to the world for your answers. Look at nature. Now let's observe the robes, the height and acme of beauty
Purchase
and
your tracks
perfection
today.
in a flower. This awesome spectacle gives off a fresh fragrance and undergoes several transformations to reach the level of top-notch
Purchase your tracks
fantasticness. This flower has petals, and it is desired by all lovers as gifts to their lovers, as a sign of love, affection,
Purchase
as well
your
as
tracks
pleasure.
today.
But before this flower reaches this stage and phase, it receives so many
Purchase your
expectations to
tracks today.
bud, blossom, and bloom. Praise Yahweh. This flower has a promising future, if only it can make it past
Purchase
the
your
beginning
tracks
stages
today.
of development. Hallelujah, Yahweh. If it receives proper nourishment and protection. Also notice that there are quite a few variations of
Purchase
color
your
of the
tracks
rose,
today.
such as pink, red, black, yellow, and white. As we
It's
acknowledge the
motherfucking
freshness
mellow,
and beauty
motherfucking
of that this
beat.
flower presents, let us incorporate a divine message to us as we observe the similarities between the rose.
Purchase your tracks today.
Praise Yahweh. Look at us in the world today, growing in various environments and displaying the many different lifestyles, attitudes, and appendages that is attached onto ourselves as we maneuver, flourish, and thrive in the many different cultures and institutions. We tend to take a piece or part of every facet of life and situation or circumstance we
Purchase your
find in
tracks
ourselves
today.
and engraft it into ourselves, whether behavior, language, mode of thinking or reacting. Quite naturally, a piece of every habitat
Purchase your
becomes a
tracks
part
today.
of our own being engrafted in. That's consciously or unconsciously.
Purchase
Just
your
as an
tracks today.
untamed and uncultivated flower tends to grow up wild and wild-like. So our nature, if uncultivated and untamed,
Purchase your
uncivilized,
tracks today.
we tend to grow up with a wild and rough, unrestrained nature. These ways tend to be destructive and detrimental,
Purchase your
deadly
tracks
even,
today.
if not brought under control and given a sense of order.
It's fucking Frank
This
Mellow,
is the time, phase,
motherfucking
and stage
beat.
when we take that wild rose and trim away all of the wild and prickly, deadly, and
Purchase
destructive
your tracks
limbs
today.
and stems. And this is what we need to do to our ways. We need to begin setting ourselves up for success and prosperity, future growth and development. By getting rid of everything that is holding us down and holding us back from perfection and that exalted state. By eliminating and freeing ourselves from poisonous habits, addictions and practices, lifestyles and ways of
Purchase
thinking
your
that
tracks
tend to
today.
drag us down and backwards. By trimming and cutting away repetitive cycles and purposeless traditions, rituals and routines, we are advancing ourselves from the stagnant position and
Purchase
pushing
your tracks
forward
today.
toward excellence, magnificence, splendor and achievement. But we must first recognize our
Purchase your
current
tracks
condition
today.
as well as disposition. This is of extreme importance because this is when our minds begin to develop and take
Purchase
form.
your tracks today.
Similar to when the rose begins the process from budding to blossoming. It is said, when the student
Purchase
is
your
ready,
tracks today.
the teacher appears. This is because the teacher has been there all along. The student wasn't ready, however. But when the time comes for the mind to develop and grow further, it undergoes a transformation period just as the bud of a rose does. The next stage is of importance because it pushes forth of its own essence, displaying and showing forth everything it has gathered and collected thus far, growing in its wild nature in a sense. And this is necessary, but this is also the period where the pruning takes place. Now, let us look at the word prune.
Purchase
By
your tracks
definition,
today.
it means to cut off or remove dead, or it says to cut off or remove dead or living parts or branches of. It also means to improve shape or growth. To remove what is superfluous or undesirable is the definition
Purchase
of
your
prune.
tracks today.
So it is only when this takes place, the removing of dead and unproductive people, places, and things from our life, can we continue the
Purchase
process
your
of
tracks
thriving,
today.
flourishing, and developing or perfecting. Hallelujah. This is also when the rose is
Purchase your
removed from
tracks
around the
today.
bush or brush that it grew up in and around, placing it by itself, such as in timeout, confinement, jail, or prison. A lot of times, people bring their own ways right along with them into these different environments and never change, even preventing change or growth from happening. For instance, for illustration, you can take the child from out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto from out of the child. So it doesn't matter if you give them an insurmountable quantity amount of money or wealth or materialism, they will take those destructive habits into that environment, which is necessarily summed up as a status, a symbol of success. They will bring the destructive habits and ways along with them and destroy that which is looked upon as being privileged. Hallelujah. Wait.
Purchase your tracks today.
So as stated, this is the time when we take the rose from among the brush, from among the
Purchase your
wild,
tracks today.
and you set it apart. Okay? That's necessarily negating when you trim your rose. Hallelujah.
your
Let's back
tracks
that up
today.
for a second. A lot of times people bring their own ways right along with them into these destructive environments and never change, even preventing change or growth from happening, being hampered by the pressure of expectations cast over them or the image thus created and portrayed. But to those who take the time to prune and trim their rose, which is their mind, cutting away all of the deadly and destructive ways, methods of thinking, acting, and living, they grow and develop the petals and fragrance, which makes it desirable and exalted above
Purchase your tracks
every
today.
other flower. That is why you also see many 40, 50, 60-year-olds with 19 and 20-year-old habits, ways, and accommodations instead of maturing
Purchase your tracks
to a
today.
well-groomed and sought-after individual. It's because they didn't take the time out.
Purchase
So
your
hopefully
tracks today.
you will take the time out to trim your rose. Also notice, look at the thorns of this rose. They are sharp
Purchase your
and
tracks
protective
today.
even. This also is the developed rose or mind. It becomes sharp, penetrating even, and happens to be a defense mechanism, your strongest weapon. So my brothers and sisters, trim your rose. Shalom alaikum. Don't look to the world for your answers. Look at nature. Volume 1. Peace.